back to this: the souls have the final say, and it's not the soul fragments. Okay.
Oh, I see. Okay, the central soul.
The central soul, or some people would call it the oversoul, or the higher self. Those are all names that basically mean the same thing. It's our soul.
Right. Well,
it's the big guy. Yes.
The big one.
Yeah.
Do you get into financial questions? In other words, right now, one of the biggest problems we're experiencing is the financial instability of our banking system, both in Europe and to some extent here in the U.S. And it wouldn't take much of a stretch to see that turning into a real calamity and affecting millions and millions of people's lives. Is this a question that you have posed? And
Yes, and I was trying to find it for you. I may not be able to fast. It's I was told, as I asked specifically about the euro or any other currencies collapsing this year, and I was told that they could almost get to the breaking point, but the central banks in Europe and the Federal Reserve, which of course is run by the Morgans and the Rockefellers and what have you, and for those of you that don't know out there, the Federal Reserve is a private banking concern. It is not a government entity. Yeah. Yet they're allowed to print money. So that's one of those things that is on my change list, shall we say? But anyway, are not happy with. But these central banks are going to make sure that the euro does not collapse, because they would not want, this is according to Theo, they would not want people going around paying for things in gold and silver, because they wouldn't be able to control things. So they're going to prop up these currencies to make sure that none of them collapse, because they want to continue to run things behind the scenes.
But meanwhile, though, could we have a financial crisis where there is a lot of suffering, and I guess specifically a depression or a hyperinflation? Of course, it doesn't matter if bread's $1 million or a nickel. If you can't pay for it, it's all the same. But
sure, and obviously, if the euro is going to get kind of close to collapse, what does that tell you? Stock market is going to be in the dumps, or sluggish, at the very least. There are some good things, as we've seen, that have come along recently, like job improvements and things like that. But if Spain is having a rough time, Greece is having a rough time, Italy, Portugal, you've got several countries in Europe that are really kind of on the ropes, and they're going to have to be propped up.
With paper, of course.
With paper, yeah. Says, I ask for Europe, what is the biggest story coming out of Europe in 2012? Certainly the ongoing crisis in the monetary area will continue all year, Tom. It will constantly be in the news. That's a given. What about Spain? Again, their economic troubles and unemployment, just as it will be in Greece, Portugal, and Italy. Then I ask, will Mount Vesuvius erupt this year? Yes, the probability of this occurring will be at this time over 80%, but still not signed off by your souls. What about the UK? Mostly just politics this year. They will certainly have a hand in negotiations with the countries in the Middle East to try and diffuse the conflicts there. So, well,
you bring up politics, and these kind of crises occurring can have a profound effect upon the mood of the voters, the public at large. So, and of course, the way the government reacts to this kind of unsettledness going on. What do you see in that regard?
Well, one of the interesting things that's going to come out is that I've been told that there's an 80 to 90% probability that Mrs. Clinton will be President Obama's running mate. So,
well, certainly that would anything would be an improvement over the current one. So,
I mean, that's a very wise political move if he does that. She brings a lot to the table. A lot of people admire her, So I think that'll be an interesting move. Of course, I'm being told that it's a 90% probability that President Obama be reelected, and the Republicans will say, well, he was reelected because by default, that there was nobody out there that could give him a good run for his money.
Mm. Well, certainly it is typical for presidents to have a second term. I mean, it's unusual when you have a one-term president like Jimmy Carter and that sort of thing. So, well, that's some big news for a lot of folks right there.
I know. For your conservative audience, I have really gotten some fire when I put it. Oh, you're Democratic leaning or whatever. I mean, I've gotten emails like that, and I say, hey, look, I am just the messenger.
I'm sure.
All I can do is tell you what I receive, and they could have told me, hey, he's not going to last in office. There's going to be this shining knight from the GOP, and I would have put that in the newsletter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me. Whatever they tell me, that's what I get.
That's it. Well, just for our audience sake, to let you know, I do not check the political affiliation of our guests, and I'm not going to start.
And I would be considered non-political. I really am. I'm the only things I get kind of political about would be like the Japanese whaling ships that are down towards the Antarctic right now. That gets me.
They're harpooning them for scientific research.
Exactly. Yeah, and the Sea Shepherd people are down there to try and fight them, and but one of the Sea Shepherd, their little fiberglass ship, took a rogue wave and almost split the boat in two, and so one of the other major ships had to drag it back to Fremantle or some place like that, a port that was like a 5-day voyage, and then that delays them getting down to stop the whalers. So that's kind of where I get political, because I believe in preserving these great cetaceans that are wonderful beings that are very evolved. So I'm political on that.
All right. Well, and I agree with you there. That brings up an excellent question about them being evolved. I mean, the whales and the dolphins are proven to be highly intelligent animals. What is their relationship to this ascension to a higher frequency that you're talking about? Are they part of this plan? Do they have souls?
Oh yes, they're the keepers. We'll be able to eventually communicate with them and be able to learn very much about the history of the Earth, because they have kept the whole history of the Earth for us, and it's my understanding that they come also from the water planets of the Sirius B Star System, like my friend Antura. Seems like there's a lot of water planets. Antura has told me there's over 20-something planets that circle the Sirius B star, and I don't know how many circle the Sirius A star, but that's supposedly the A star is where our cats and dogs come from.
Yeah, I knew it came from someplace other.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Since the Earth is 2/3 covered by water, I suppose some beings would consider this a water planet compared to where they are.
yeah, in a way, certainly more than enough water for most beings. Antura has told me that only 10% of his planet is land, and there are beings that live on the land that they communicate with, but 90% of their planet is water.
Mm. I'd like to switch directions here for a moment. Besides the huge economic challenges we have ahead of us, there has been so much saber rattling in the Middle East, and U.S. and Israeli forces have recently announced joint exercises due about the same time as a newly announced Iranian military exercise. And I guess the big question on people's minds is, is this at some point going to lead to open hostilities? I mean, relationship just seems to be getting worse and worse, and more threats. Right. And
I haven't asked that specific question. I know one of the things that I asked was, what about the UK? And I was told mostly just politics this year. They will certainly have a hand in negotiations with the countries in the Middle East to try and diffuse the conflicts there. So perhaps they will be one of the ones that will be successful. But I have not asked specifically about Israel and Iran yet. So that's to come. And I haven't asked too many questions about North America yet. So other than Southern California, Northern California having like a Northern California 80% chance of earthquakes, and Southern 70 or to 75%. So and that's in the second half of the year, but not too far into the second half of the year, in the summer, I was told. So I can't answer the question about the Middle East thoroughly.
All right. And what about unrest in the U.S.? Of course, the Terrorist Act, I suppose, would be part of that Middle East unrest. But if you haven't really looked at that, and perhaps you don't foresee that. But some of these Occupy Wall Street characters, is this part of a growing movement? And let me back up just a bit. I guess I spent 40 years as a financial analyst, economist, and in the investment business, and so. I study the economy not only on a macro but a micro basis, and one of our very talented state directors with E.P.I.C works at a VA hospital as dialysis the technician, and he does this on his own time, and he tells me that these. Unlike in years past, these VA hospitals are filled with middle-class folks that are out of jobs that have no place else to turn. And in the past, it was people who had mental problems or disabilities and that sort of thing. But more and more, it's folks who are long-term unemployed. Of course, they don't show up on the rolls, and so I guess. I kind of sympathize with a lot of the folks who, are suffering, but I don't really see anything to make that go away on the horizon. And you think, well, I guess the bottom line is people are going to become more conservative, or they're going to become more demonstrative, or just.
Well, one of the things that I did get, and I may have mentioned this earlier in our talk was that this Occupy Wall Street movement will result in more independent candidates that will more fully represent the constituents, and eventually it's going to lead to a no-party system where people will be simply elected on their, what they can do for the country.
Well, a third-party candidate would certainly explain the probability of Obama's reelection. So.
Well, no, not a third party. I said a no party.
Oh no, I mean in the immediate future.
Oh, in the immediate future.
Yeah.
I think what I was being told was that this will be more like a grassroots movement where they'll start fielding some candidates in more local elections, perhaps. I mean, that's what it sounded like to me. It doesn't sound like a national thing yet, and then, but somewhere down the way, it's going to lead to, in the next few years, 10 whatever, it's going to lead to that no-party system where we'll have people much more responsive to us and our needs than these parties that all they can care about is how much money they can make while they're in office. Well, that's true,
Follow the money.
Follow the money.
I think now we're 45 minutes into the program. It's a good place to take a quick break. And when we come back, I hope we can talk about some of the things that you see here that are actually some pretty good outcomes after the Mayan calendar day. So we'll leave it at that and be back in just a few short minutes. Meanwhile, be sure to check Tom's website at the gentlewaybook.com and Epic's website, epicvoyagers.com. Thank you. We'll be back in a few minutes. Hi, we're back. I'm Ken Cherry, your host here on Epic Voyages, and my guest this evening is author, speaker Tom T. Moore. And we're talking about some of the events that Tom is seeing to occur this year. By the way, a quick note to the audience. I did notice a number of questions, and I appreciate those coming in. We did address a number of them, the earthquake and tsunami for Japan, and several other questions. And we will get back to those and ask them again more specifically at 9 o'clock. But right now, Tom, I want to mention, of course, that the 2012 has been so hyped for the last several years as ushering in some sort of apocalypse, based on the Mayan calendar, Nostradamus predictions, etc. And while you do see some pretty big epochs coming, do you foresee anything near your end as predicted on a worldwide scale? Or
Okay. Yeah. First of all, it's my understanding now, from being told this several different times, that only very sensitive people are going to be able to notice the difference between December the 21st and December the 22nd here of 2012. That's when Theo told me, he said that's when you're going to switch to the fifth focus. And he said if you had chosen August the 1st or July 15th or whatever else, what other date, that would have been the date. But everybody, all our souls chose December the 21st, and that's when it's going to happen. And so we're not going to be able to really notice it at first, because what will happen is that we're going to go, right now, Theo tells me that in the third dimensional focus, we're at 3.85 and rising. Okay, so we're getting up pretty close to the end there, and so we will go from let's just say 3.95. I'm just going to use the number, I don't know, to 5.0001. Okay, we'll be at the bottom of the fifth dimensional focus, and it won't. We're going to start being able to see more brilliant colors and things like that, but perhaps it won't be apparent. And the other thing that will happen is that people will start becoming more mellow. People will not be so antagonistic. They'll be more willing to compromise and be a good citizen. So those are things that are going to happen. Now, before that happens, we have to watch out for what I call the Jim Joneses of the world coming out of the woodwork. And Ken, I'm sure you went through that as I remember it, because I actually knew one of the reporters, the NBC reporter who was killed, and he was from this area, if you recall,
Yes.
that was killed down at Jim Jones's compound in where was it, Costa Rica or whatever, and so we don't want to. They're going to be that type of person that's going to say, "Oh, follow me. I'm going to be your savior," and oh, let's all take Kool-Aid, whatever. So we have to be careful of that type of person coming out of the woodwork.
So there will be false prophets about that time.
And I mean, I've actually already had an email from someone that said, "Tom, what should I do? Should I sell all my possessions and go to ground?" I mean, some people are really afraid, and they shouldn't have anything to be fearful of. Yes, there's going to be cataclysmic earthquakes and things like that in certain parts of the world, but we've had those last year, in 2011. So it may happen to perhaps more densely populated places this year, but it's not something that scientists haven't known about, the Pacific Ring of Fire and that kind of stuff before.
So the world is not going to end, and everybody shouldn't run out and max their credit cards.
But if they want to, I mean, they can buy me dinner.
Well, I got to say this. Has anybody accused you of being a false prophet, Tom?
I have been accused of things like that. That I'm. Oh gosh, I get some rambling stuff ever so often from people that are very sincere in their beliefs, and you should not talk to false gods, and you're only supposed to pray to to God and so on and so forth. I mean, there is that element. I understand that. I honor their choices in this life. Everybody makes different choices, but we're all going to wind up at the very same place.
It's a good place. Let's all hope. Do you, I think this sort of relates to one of our listeners' questions. Have you kept any sort of a tally on the accuracy of some of the forecasts you've made? And I understand that you're not making these in every case as 100% certainty. Sometimes you assign a probability.
Well, now I do. Now that I'm slowly understanding that. When I made predictions before, I didn't understand probabilities, and I found I was only about 30 to 40% accurate. And nowadays, when I say something is going to happen, I'm saying this is a probability. Okay. Even now, with the Souls of Japan signing off on it, I don't know if it's really going to happen tomorrow or next week or next month. All I can do is report what I'm told, and I've even thought seriously about it, and I wonder that if I were truly, let's just say, 95% accurate, and would say, well, Southern California is going to have an earthquake on, August 15th of this year. That people that were supposed to experience that event would say, well, I'm not going to be in Southern California then. I'm taking a vacation. I'm going to Florida, and they would miss the event. So my thinking is that I don't know if they would allow me to be that accurate for that reason.
Well, what is it? 35% in baseball will make you millions a year, so that's pretty. That's pretty good. I think that you've just pretty much covered one of the questions we just had from the listener. If you had any updates on the expected earthquake and tsunami for Japan.
Yeah, covered that.
Yeah, and of course. Another listener wants to know if animals have souls, and you did mention when we were talking about.
Now, like our cats and dogs have group souls because they're not involved in this. The only thing that they're doing for the Earth experiment is supporting us. Okay, and so they are a group soul. So like all the cats come from one soul and all the dogs of the earth from another soul. Keep in mind, our souls are having hundreds of thousands of lives across this universe at the same time we're having these lives, because again, they have to have all this knowledge that they're having to gather in order to be able to run a universe. So we're not their only one. Their only set of lives, so to speak, but we're the most important because of what we're doing, being veiled.
Well, I don't know about you, but my experience is cats think that they are the most important. So that's what
and our dogs run us, but
yeah. When you wait on them, they say, I must be God. They're waiting on me.
Yeah.
So, well, somebody here wants a tip on, making a few bucks in the Forex or futures exchanges. Do you see any big swings that they can take advantage of, either in the euro or gold or silver or hog bellies, whatever?
I haven't asked my euro question yet. Last year, I asked how the euro, last January or somewhere around there of 2011, I was asked how the euro would be at the end of the year. And as I recall, it wasn't that fantastic at that time. And I was told at the end of the year it would be somewhere around the same place it started. It may have been a little bit lower, I think. I don't know. I haven't looked at the exchange rate, so I wouldn't go to the bank on on that. I would feel terrible if you did. So